Hello, Americans. My name is Anthony Wall. I was an observer in the court next to the World Trade Center. I was at the court next to the World Trade Center towers right before the attack. I'm one of the people that the news and that people from the Saudi Arabia and America, they were used remotely at the same time on and off Connecticut campuses, here and there, a whole bunch of different countries at the same time. One's named Demoro, Kalol, and Scalora said they are related. A Scalora is like involved with identity theft, fraud, slanders to me, and rolls with investigators next to schools. Where sometimes people say something like, someone asked me about a Scalora. I didn't want to get into it because there's more than one Scalora involved with identity theft, fraud, slander against me. People with Miami too, trying to make an exception all the way out in Miami, um, Florida, with people involved with the World Trade Center attack, with the Scalora next to the World Trade Center, and with the court next to it, and all sides of that case and their sources, and people at the World Trade Center and next to where they live, including their roles next to with names next to body dumping spots and next to parks with federal evidences crimes, predicate acts with facts, whole methods of them, bound by the breaching method. That is at countries A through Z too. It is hyper foreign. Forgiveness is because that's what's motivating you guys to self value roles, forcing, tricking, hurting, persuading other things, others, or selves blamed for things that our founders, as James Madison too in his plan, and that nature itself is showing us to blame on a human fact, human nature breaching method, that which both slavery laws that were simultaneous in that breaching method against Native Americans, when they helped them, when they hurt them, the difference of that roles. This is a difference. We have the same color eyes, different color eyes at the same time. We have other communicated about difference. We have people at countries A through Z fighting to speak about economies, leaving out what our founders and what their own founders communicated about it, because they had to communicate through cipher. Because the campuses before modern religious messages were born, there are proofs from off them though. And then hyper additionally through other motivations, natures, needs, interests, apparent, and even the real ones used to screen the breaching method, measuring and maintained with no one fathom. How it forced, tricked, hurt, and persuaded names A through Z of countries that could only be operated by locations, areas, and states. Forced, tricked, hurt, and persuaded to defend themselves from what a hyper foreign did. Specifically, have to for them to defend themselves wrong as factual nature, therefore as physically. And then for counters to that, to be right to counter that, but doing it regardless of right or wrong, doing it in the way also keeping other things, also self-valuing the breaching method more and more, rolls with it, not even realizing, simultaneously making investing voices of the names of the people of sciences in all exceptions, therefore everybody. And the difference of that, so therefore everybody invested more and more, incapable of allowing anyone else or themselves to use short words properly with convictions. For example, by unabridged, there was a distinct nature, non-distinctly, of roles with those crazy laws that were the breaching method laws against Native Americans, whether it's helping them or in the colonists, sickly distinctly, but also sickly non-distinctly, and the countries that here or there were shared. But now, through and as systems already having been tactical ulterior natures, already having been forced, tricked, certain, persuaded to be self-value collusion /s, with and as that hyper-foreign breaching method system, as systems A through Z, tactically ulterior from the one that causes positive value nature progressions, acts and natures. and or it demonstrates with negative value nature progressions, acts, and natures. Finite, grouped, and simultaneous. Where and how it works. In other words, all stupid jerks, because I have came through campuses abridged. And so Bach sings, but says no word but shush. Boxing, excuse me. Boxing, martial arts, and wrestling are grouped by nature to show us. We are a species body that is distinct from the other species bodies, but also non-distinct. So we could be shown we have two eyes because there are other species with two eyes. There is an identity of value progression that is neither us nor them, but is all things anyway. Nature itself shows us we need to name us the scientific value of all things. Well, not, but anyway, because that's the way. Three distinct identities of relationship to itself are manifest simultaneously, where its individual self is discernible, because the rest of itself is greater than, while being simultaneously more finite than, this part we are individual. We are human. Look how we are a human species body, individual species body of individual bodies with all group differences generated by its own. That which is generating totally different species bodies so we can discern it and value its system here, or it is forced from here. As Earth's a special difference as our own, forced from here. As leaf of Hadith. I know I say Earth's, not the other species bodies, because they are criminally foreign influenced. But I'm not using criminal foreign influences as the definitions of it, and the definers of it use it or have used it. Black pupils. They cannot use, they have not used it right, or they have used it wrong, or we would have discerned. Each one would have learned, boxing. I could just dig. In other words, I'll donate. In other words, with like the gaming system that goes with it, pantheism, in a counter hyper tactical way, /S, and using what I like for everybody in every single country agrees. We want the clearest, cleanest water possible. We want the best, cleanest, food, and we want the ocean clean without having to suffer to clean it. We don't have to. In other words, they make us think of. We have the systems tactical here from nature, where there's positive everywhere at once. So we all sense, or someone senses. Shout out to the individual named President/Chief Donald Trump for paying attention to his math classes. And I know every modern country leader's name because they're individual. And any individual. There, offensively, this preaching method has the order of the finite, possessed, /hyper possessed. And it has roles with that no one wanted. And then even when they're all real examples, even for them, they don't. Except for where and how people went about treating subjects, using names their own, using differences. Forgiveness is because one of the reasons is forgiveness. There are things that we learn through the nature of religions, through the nature of education, that are distinct from what we learn through the physics of it, what is written. Campuses A through Z sickly distinctly have overtly / simultaneously insidiously failed, and worse than failed our founders behind James Madison, his plan, where there was no other means to unentrench that which had slavery entrenched northern colonies, southern colonies, and all roles. And those that body was sensed, including that body was a majority of people, including it was everyone. And then America's founders were born behind James Madison and his plan, as we were directed to explain it. And then they took it to George Washington, and he had to help. We're supposed to be honest about his extortion and his roles with that plan, which was to counter extort and force other people to have no choice but to help them. Not because they had the might physically to overcome those internationally monitored conversations and roles with that breaching method that had functional, how sickly distinctly northern colonies and southern colonies had roles with slavery and through the possession of other countries since before they were born and through their births, just like America's. Through the birth of America, slavery was entrenched because other is being communicated for James Madison because they still didn't have free speech yet, and for each. And there was still roles with the breaching method, which was is a torture, extortion, fact, human nature, slavery method. One shouldn't have to debate for a moment that and about the thing about the black people's rights of eyes. Yet we have to go hard and long into it because other is formally collusions and the differences of the guilt with the formal interbranch, including their state judicial branch offices and corrections offices of Connecticut, roles of the World Trade Center attack, and names with Connecticut campuses through time. I don't know if in other words, there is a mail, there was reportedly, and I didn't have conversations with my family. They're attaching family members to fake conversations with their family members, and they're making exceptions. People with the World Trade Center attack, Central Connecticut State University, and a whole bunch of people tied to them from Wethersfield sought me out to record, confess, demonstrate, confirm. They have roles of people at the World Trade Center and spots next to it, including the court next to it. All sides of that case, and the court put a sequence shift inside the database with people that put sequence shifts and predicate acts with names next to each of the campuses I went to where there were ties to that. And the ones with the news that faked conversations with me. They have roles also with the intelligence next to them and their roles with the state capitol. In other words, it's recorded how anyone, in other words, you see here people speak about truth. No one spoke about truth, but as criminal insidious natures of it. This breaching method knew that someone would have to fake it. People would have to be self-eyed roles with faking it. Faked it. I don't know what they said. In other words, we have to have that principle understood. And so there are wire crime acts and methods that are predicate acts with facts methods. And there are motivations with use of location collusion /S. Where, like, for example, a whole bunch of people tied to a Prone family and a Kerr family in their religious spots. And people involved with child abusers, leaders of kids, first force years apart, where they had time collusions with that, with other natures of wire crime acts and methods, roles with stacking descriptions of what happens at crime scenes, or just at scenes when they're called to spots like fire departments, their family members, their roles with next to the news locations, next to the public television locations, then their roles with Facebook and YouTube. The FBI director, Robert Luskin, has roles with people with all the countries and Judge Napolitano's communications. These countries having serious problems because there are things unfolding with natures of weapon systems where countries A through Z have campuses A through Z, where they use each other's names and differences, still criminally foreign influence, hyper and tactically delusions wrong, but also hyper criminally foreign influence, so to speak. I'm not a lawyer, thank God. The former standing chairperson on the Racketeering Influence and Corrupt Organizations Act, Robert Luskin, and his lawyer, Robert Chevalier. They're involved also with Hartford Court's family members and military and fire department and people houses next to them, next to campuses in West Hartford, with the name Eric Burgess. I don't know his mother and father and their narratives regarding their rules with the people, with the religious spot there, and there's a campus there. I mean, there's a park there tied to a Dennis family, a Joseph Dennis, involved with digital crimes, with people per a former Mayor Gold, who involved with them, with putting predicate acts with facts in databases. I never saw him inside of our campuses. He was influenced to make fake ties, fake natures of ties to me, a Joseph Dennis and a John Dennis, with a former Mayor Gold, increasingly putting people, influence a whole bunch of people that I never tried to contact, like from my town. There are connections between them and their roles with the World Trade Center attack, and the ones from Connecticut who had roles with the interstates. And these are also people with Washington, D.C. A bunch of people tied to Mike Pandolf has roles with the Washington, D.C., with intelligence families from Glastonbury, also with people with the name Scalora, involved with people on my street, involved with wire crimes with them, and identity theft, fraud, slanders, police that attached me to fake being at the Weathersfield police station as a kid and then as an adult. Chris Walters also has rules with them, with people all along Route 175 from the founding locations in Old Weathersfield, involved with a whole bunch of natures of identity theft, fraud, slanders, and predicate acts with facts, and in databases collusions, and then acting tied to that. As people involved with news too have been planting evidences and fake motivations increasingly. I don't know if the Weathersfield judicial branch offices for the state and the corrections offices, as the increasing collusions with this breaching methods uses of names on all sides of criminal and civil cases, and the courts, and the interbranch and intelligence, which is for the domestic mixed since before our founders were born, here and there. Our country's names being operated by locations, areas, and states still criminally foreign influence because they're hyper criminally foreign influenced. You know, and that's per nature's definition of it. In other words, nature itself shows us someone takes part with a tenth of the evil of the laws that were in place when witch trials were in place, even if they were completely made up. They're right next to the founding location, Webb House, now renamed the Webb Stevens Museum, further obfuscated, further still communicating other than our founders were supposed to communicate about those founding locations. George Washington had to come there to counter extort, to force them to break the laws to an extent. They had to leave slavery entrenched in northern colonies and southern colonies. And those countries that were involved with it, and the international companies, they were all mused remotely too. The differences of their guilt with the hyper foreign, that which had that sickly distinctly, also recorded how non-distinctly, even though it was against everyone, it measures and maintains that self-value. In other words, and then people are increasingly self-valuing that lied about in the past, when rather than everyone self-valuing to counter it, what was hurting all equally. In other words, like the suburbs from America to Russia to Ukraine, the tortured, extorted, fact-cheating nature enslaved colonists, sickly distinctly northern colonies and southern colonies, no tactically altering them, pretending with music playing in backgrounds, supposed to understand how they had to counter extort, and they had to leave only to an extent. Saying you don't vote on slavery, otherwise it's just a real quick vote. In other words, you know what I'm saying? And anyone who voted against it, they were tortured, fact-cheating nature, extorted, and enslaved. That's why. In other words, therefore physically enslaved. See, this breaching method forced, tricked, hurt, and persuaded the operators of names A through Z as the human species body of individual bodies that can only be operated by locations, areas, and states. Forced, tricked, hurt, and persuaded them to defend themselves by countering wrong, the other names, increasingly screening its own. In other words, this part of what's really behind the fentanyl. I don't even have to see, I've never even seen fentanyl. Increasingly, people from Hartford Hospital are involved with people with the corrections offices and the judicial branch offices, with the campuses, with identity theft, fraud, slanders, not legitimate roles like overtraining, etc. A whole bunch of people tied to a Jamie Carone. I got out of his class because of it. They recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed he's involved with people with um, identity theft, fraud, slanders on my street. With the police that attached me fake conversations with them as a kid, now as an adult. They have the sense and sensibilities of Judge Napolitano being and having been used by them this way. Many pray. I don't know who the girl is tied to, Joe DeMoro. He was reportedly his girlfriend. And there's a Napolitano. I don't remember her first name. Involved with Ray Colo. Ray Colo and Joe DeMoro. I don't know. That's why they called me there. They called me there, put fake ties, fake natures of ties to me, and to hide what was recorded before that with the people from off each of the campuses I went with names next to them, putting predicate acts with facts and databases. These are also names with them at and next to Hartford Hospital's campus. And people run in from Hartford campus, fire campuses, and things like that to hide live progressions. People increasingly with fake, I never even had conversations with them, but they have roles putting fake transcripts and their roles with a whole bunch of judges and prosecutors, even victims advocates with the same house/S, involved also with their extended family members with more threats of violence. And these are ones involved with the World Trade Center attack. And increasingly, Wethersfield police also have a Mendez family with New Britain Superior Court and with Wethersfield Police Department. They put me in fake conversation with themselves, and they stole a sentence I said to my Saudi friend, who increasingly she knew them before I knew her. And these are people involved also, like with the DeMoro family, is also recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed. They put it a fake exception of knowing me, a real quick instant at when I was in seventh or eighth grade at middle school, and that was the only time I ever saw Joe DeMoro on a campus. Either one quick instant at middle school and once at grammar school. They have something to do with a whole bunch of people at Trinity College and next to it, and at Central Connecticut State University and next to it, with interbranch family members who are also involved with the other branches too, with their extended family members, and then their roles with each other, intimate in other ways, all be abused to abuse others too. And the difference of them being abused or the abusers or the other people is also exploited by the breaching of the screens roles with it. A whole bunch of other countries involved with them. I minded my business. Increasingly, the people involved with the interbranch that won't get on paper are confessing and demonstrating these things relative to bring up because they put their wire and mail crime methods, digital crime action methods. There's an officer Poisey, and I'm not sure what he looks like. I want to go put the picture of the guy I think it is. But he's a sick guy with Whiting Forensics, also has state police families interstates with them with digital crime and all kinds of predicate acts methods. And they increasingly put me to fake to change communications with everyone around me to prevent me from demonstrating what they recorded themselves involved with, and names next to body dumping spots years apart. Increasingly with people from my grammar school involved with the principal. Involved with a sixth grade teacher that lived the street over. I don't know if he still lives there. They're family members. There's like three brothers. I don't know if they had a sister. I don't know the mother's name. I don't know the first name of Burstein. He's increasingly involved with people with putting predicate acts with facts in databases and acting tied to that, and with people involved with New Britain Superior Court, but also with Central Connecticut State University, New Britain, Connecticut, is also involved intercities and intra-cities. So the rest of other campuses in New Britain, there's a worse thing, criminal incompetence. There's a certain type of victim / hyper victim, and there are self-value roles with that. Otherwise, that body is sensed, including that body is a majority of people, including that body is everybody still. And it is adapted, everyone as a country still that is adapted to because even any grouping of countries, if they try to counter, there's still locations, areas, and states as styles used remotely. Criminally foreign influence slash hypercriminally foreign influence. It's observable just with how everyone debates what's not debatable. They used James Maston's plan, had to counter extort at key locations. They wanted nothing to do with slavery, but they had to leave it entrenched because everyone was fact cheaping nature tortured, extorted, and fact cheaping nature enslaved. They declassified how they didn't have free speech and why they didn't have free speech because there was a human fact cheaping nature breaching method in place. And it all rolls with it. Therefore, a whole bunch of roll methods. Then the breaching method shows them they have to hide their methods because look how they can show it, and look how nature is going to show them needs to discern that. And then, it uses them like this, A through Z. All identities of sophistication and of non-sophistication. The difference of that too, because this is about a trinity that where we have it obfuscated from ourselves too. In other words, so please, you have to get them on paper. The differences of the guilt is also exploited for them. So no, so overt criminal enterprises, private ones, terrorists, they have self-body rules with the same sequences, the same criminally foreign influence, tactically delusions wrought, natures of logic, and natures regarding anyone who makes convictions proper regarding the clear as day, fact cheaping nature, torture, extortion, slavery method upon those locations. Worst, where the worst crime statistics. They have the worst on and off their campuses and the differences of guilt here or there too. In other words. So kinetic intelligence recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed. There are a bunch of judges, family members, people I never saw in my area from my life that planted evidence on my street with a Delafair family. I never saw them on my street in my life. They have probate court judges that have been planting evidences with intelligence families from Wethersfield, and they put fake conversations, fake ties to me, fake nature ties to me and to others. This is a breaching method that keeps all cowards while pretending other with fact treatment nature. Exactly the way the breaching method. All exceptions, exception nature that appear to be in demonstration of others, they come with demonstrations of the same thing. Please get me off the fake conversations with Channel 3 News about the World Trade Center attack and about other things. They put me in fake conversations with themselves about things and with themselves about others with things too. The others don't even know. Others, they lied about how I know them and what I know about them, which actually recorded. Increasingly in the Britain Superior Court in New Britain, Connecticut, has collusions with the Wethersfield judicial branch offices, and that all along the conjunctions to it, like Route 3, and like where Elm Streets in Wethersfield and Rocky Hill, with the branches of government have individually grouped in together. Predicate acts with facts methods there, also grouped methods there with town lines used. Too, these are people with town lines, with interbranch and intelligence, foreign and domestic, here and there, hypercriminally foreign influence. In other words, they don't have the possession of their identities. That's why and how they have rules with some black, white, KKK, Confederate flag theme with the names next to each of my campuses, planting, acting, and having others pretend things. People tied to them doing and having done that. In other words, and these are crime statistics and polling locations involve all the natures of organized crimes. Same people pretending they could legitimately speak on crimes. The breaching method made that only capable of being. Otherwise, that body is sensed. Including that body is everyone, black people. All we have to do is not is focus on where there is blame that no one wants. In other words, like even, like with the ocean and with the fresh water, There are proofs that the breaching method, even if it's not true, it's more practical and probable than what is convicted and theorized by the people of the sciences. For example, in place of what our founders communicated and for them. So you guys were forced, checked, and persuaded to interpret our founders' words, leaving out what they communicated, what they declassified about the breaching method, leaving out what nature itself declassified about the breaching method. It was using a breaching method sickly distinctly northern colonies and southern colonies through using remote names remotely and roles with it remotely. The differences of the roles remotely too, to hide behind and through that which had sickly distinctly. There were more than 13 colonies before America's founders were born. There were internationally monitored conversations for, internationally companies, overt criminal enterprises, private ones, and terrorists. The breaching method propagated to hide behind and through all natures of criminal insidiousness, all natures of positive criminal insidiousness and negative syntactically appreciations as collusions to keep from our discernment, from the identity of relativity to ourselves of the breaching method, a scientific value, just like the scientific value of that which is all things at once while it is not, but anyway, so we can discern it. But now many pray, not just because of that, but because the sciences are abridged in pretending other, exactly the way it wanted and needs. It needs to maintain that the outcome, and there's a method to it. And no one wants it, so all I have to do is pay attention to it. But no one follows mandated laws legitimately. Someone should be able to say, okay, they're interbranch. They have been collusions at the crime scenes. They're forging and switching names. There are only three branches of government. The intelligence tied to them and their family members. Increasingly, East Hartford locations and roles with the New Britain Superior Court has roles with a bunch of people tied to the name DeMorrow and a former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin, and his lawyer, Robert Chevrolet. And there's a Thaddeus Grabowski increasingly about with police forms, intercities, complete. I'm involved with predicate acts on my street, and people involved with child abusers that are leaders of Kids First Force. They're more involved, and they counter it by their roles with organized crimes, with putting faked and changed transcripts, even on campuses, filmed 24/7. There are many countries that have been grouped here and there, coupled too, like with borders, as systems and ways tactical to from how nature shows us to appreciate such differences. See cell nucleus, cell body, cell wall, /S, and not just the identity of life coming through this. Identities, volume science, /hypervolume science. I mean, not just the water and its elements and gases and their elements. I mean, their mixture and relativity to what it communicates about how what it wants and needs for contemplation. How, why? Like our founders, too. Our founders' communications are placed. What is communicated is simultaneously greater than and more finite than what is said, especially in these contexts with sequence shifting, collusion /S, people making subject treatments to blame on other things other than themselves, things that not things otherwise to pretend it's just the people that they're trying to hide in the background, their roles with the other countries involved. And increasingly people from my grammar school who were not even in my class were pretending passions and emotions and putting fake things in databases against me and others, putting fake ties and fake natures of ties between people. I found I didn't even know. In other words, I'm finding out this more and more relative to what I caught them doing with the people from the other areas, like the Robert Rodriguez, and who's one of the ones on all sides of religious locations, like a religious location on Route 3 is increasingly involved with foreign and domestic military, involved with the World Trade Center attack, involved with differences, racketeering, worse than war crimes, and with Saudis and Americans before I knew them, my Saudi friends, that she'll tell you. Eric Mendez stole the sentence I said to her and pretended that he said it, that I said it to him. Or not Eric Mendez, his older brother, who uses different names. I never had a word of conversation with him at the Wethersfield police station. These are also people with the name Scalora and people with Trinity College and Central Connecticut State University, involved with former director of the F.B.I. Robert Luskin and others involved with America's roles with other countries like Saudi Arabia. These are also roles with criminally foreign influence, tactical illusions, wrought readings of the beginning of the Quran and of the beginning of the Old Testament, which they're hiding the significance of, because it would have straightened up a lot. Because they have also people at Hartford Hospital involved with them, attaching people, for example, with other hospitals too. They attach people to fake conversations about religions, in other words, etc. In other words, increasingly people at Hartford Hospital are involved with people from my grammar school that I never even had classes of my grammar school, who have been putting fake things in databases with people from Central Connecticut State University in the Britain, also with names next to the campuses, intercities connected, and next to a CCSU magnet school on Franklin Avenue, with people on off the corrections offices and the state judicial branch offices, increasingly wire crimes in the same house that has wire crime methods with them, mail crime acts and methods. And they even put me in a fake letter at Trinity College in their roles with a Joshua Stryker and a Joshua Julian with digital crimes, with the Facebook page of my grammar school too, a high Crest school, and also with more educators there. That was a student there, also involved with a former Mayor Gold and a Burstein family that lived near me. And she also confessed that a Lance Cuddy is involved. And my neighbors, people tied to them, said that people that involved with corners of streets near me said that communicated roles with a Joshua Stryker and others putting fake secret. I never had a conversation with him. He's not in my grade. Increasingly, him is and some girl tied to him and a Mike Pandoff has roles interstates with foreign and domestic intelligence and people with the corrections offices and judicial branch offices involved with all sides of criminal and civil cases and depositions and crime scenes and campuses involved with predicate acts and predicate acts methods. Identity theft, fraud, slanders, natures of them too, no, because we have black pupils, whites of eyes. And there were also black and white female judges involved with some black KKK, Confederate flag theme, Italian theme, Latino theme, etc. Identity theft, fraud, slander, faking passions and emotions with differences, as the ones involved with people from Korea, Russia, Ukraine, their doctors, their family members, the locations next to them, increasingly mayors and conjunctions to them, like a former Mayor Gold, is increasingly involved putting fake things in databases, again, with people tied to them, making confessions tied to them. I don't even know them. They try to make a fake exception in database behind my back for having her yell at me out of nowhere. And I never saw her before and after that. I mean, before one time I mentioned it. It was a dread a little quick and it was nice, no problem. A year later or 2 years later, she was doing that. Increasingly, her father has roles with people who have roles with next to Trinity College with murders and body dumping spots and their roles with a whole bunch of different countries, planting fake motivations and evidences, fake ties and fake natures of ties and sequence shifts, federal evidences, crimes with people that already have collusions with all sides of criminal and civil cases in Connecticut, as ones involved with the names at and next to all sides of the case, and the court itself with sequence shifts in the court next to the World Trade Center at the World Trade Center attack. In other words, same ones out off the state corrections offices and judicial branch offices in conjunctions to it, even where the pizza near it. I never saw a Maria Pizzina on a Weathersfield campus in my life. She has multiple people involved with her, with the FBI in New Haven, and with courts, and with with identity theft fraud, multiple intimate ties to her and others with identity theft fraud slanders. People on my street tied to her. I don't think I ever saw her on my street. I don't know if she picked me up in a car one time. Increasingly, John Milano also has roles, putting fake things, and there are proofs that he had roles of people who damaged my car. Even if it was our side, these are people criminally foreign influence with the foreign and domestic military, and their roles with locations associated with themselves and with their families from their roles with the spots next to Hartford Hospital and those 3 spots at the end of the Berlin Turnpike, and their roles with the probation, probation officers too, with the murders involved, and people with the probate court judges, and their extended family members, and people with the Weathersfield Police Facebook page, and the Facebook page in the Britain Superior Court, and the Facebook page of the Principal Being Upskirt Nature with the Joshua Julian and others who recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed him involved with predicate acts on my street with police involved with their families and the other child abusers, leaders of the kids. And their extended family members are further, like a Phil Colo is further involved with a principal child offender. And people who recorded, confessed, and demonstrated him involved with him on my street, with them playing games too, with nonverbal like one person was yelling out one of the names of one of the people they're involving between the campuses, and with the community center of Weathersfield. In other words, and I even talk to them. I just know that community center of Weathersfield and the old Weathersfield locations like Webb House is increasingly involved with people involved with the World Trade Center attack, and the judicial branch offices and corrections offices that has all kinds of natures of investigators. They're needing to cover up how they also already put fake transcripts, fake ties, fake natures of ties between people. Increasingly, people tied to Charlie Bose. I had nothing to do with Charlie Bose. I never saw him around campuses. And there's so it seems like they tried to make it look like that and pretend others simultaneously. Like I never even saw him around football practices. I went to a couple of football practices, in other words, and I did again years later. A Coach Hagenberg increasingly has people involved with that and with the kids, of the leaders of the kids, and of the and the kids who are not the leaders of the kids, abused differently, where the roles of the interbranch kids too distinctly are involved with the same differences exploited by the overt criminal enterprises and private ones involved with those same names, and their roles with at the same time with foreign and domestic intelligence. Increasingly, Justin Klavinskis and Mark Violet will tell you, and others all along Route 175. They have roles with people who have conversations and neighbors and conjunctions to more leaders of the kids in Weathersfield, as their roles with more proven child abusers, leaders of kids for years apart. They had connections, time roles with it further, and with medical offenders like a Leahy family that faked conversations with me, and a Lombardo family, as the ones from other areas involved on my street since I was a kid, with people from other areas involved with predicate acts on my street, planting fake ties, fake natures of ties to me, like the Robert Rodriguez. I didn't respond to him the first time or the second time he was on my street. I knew he was planting evidences. In other words, I explained how they have to hide that from presidents. They put fake transcripts in databases with FBI Director Robert Luskin They have a James Comey involved with this. They're covering up the sequence shit. They want to make fact treatments. People, you guys are supposed to follow mandated law. Get me off the fake conversation with WFSB, Channel 3 News, Connecticut. Get me off the fake conversations and ties to WTNH people. WTNH people has a number of Air Force people and their neighbors involved with probate court judges, family members, with a whole bunch of different countries, overt criminal enterprises and private ones, putting fake things in databases behind people's backs. And so there's nothing, so you never get the right outcome. In other words, you'll never get anything but, American history taught wrong. And that's self-value. In other words, increasingly, these are people too. Paul Abted. I don't know Paul Abted. Paul Abted. He'll tell you if he pretends to have one word of conversation with me. His sister, his sister is involved with Hartford Hospital with him, and with the Fred Grisette, with the branches of government individually grouped in together, with foreign and domestic countries, and people with New York City, boroughs, and the World Trade Center. Involved also with the campuses, private and public, where they're putting predicate acts, fake ties between people. People with the name Scalora also recorded him involved with predicate acts on my street, with people involved with home break-ins tied to them, and their roles with the extended family members of probate court judges involved with all kinds of identity theft, fraud, slanders, and medicines crimes against people, putting fake transcripts in databases, fake ties and ties between people, their collusions with all kinds of natures of crime scenes, also with various natures of courts, and personally and professionally with people with superior courts and the intimate ties, where and how they are kept collusion /S with the judicial branch offices and corrections offices, also recorded how he is remotely criminally foreign influence / hypercriminally foreign influence since founding /S. These are also people tied to what Joshua Stryker was spreading lies about me to Native Americans, and with one associated with the Native American intelligence, also involved with Hartford Hospital and with psychiatry, with delusions regarding American history and regarding Native American value too, as Native Americans, putting fake things in databases roles in their delusions. You need to get them off the fake conversations with me too, with this Leahy family. And there was a guy who told me to look at his art, who had one eye, and they said he was Native American. I had no conversation with him. I just looked at his art. In other words, at first I told him that I wanted, in other words, I'm not supposed to go in another. I don't know if he worked for them or not, or what that is too. They do little things. In other words, they make a quick instance of fake you know someone, like, and then never have communicated with anyone to cover up how they did that the first time. They put me on, and I never communicated with them then and since. This Leahy family, increasingly a Leahy family, is involved with a whole bunch of people I don't even know the names of at Hartford Hospital, involved with all kinds of, like, people with the name Lombardo too, increasingly involved with planting evidence as untimely death rolls and body dumping spots and all kinds of sick things, intercities that got connected, have connections, as the ones that there were intercities connections, because these are people that are hiding life progressions, play their roles with predicate acts, with the facts, with the databases, interference, refusing to get on paper because they recorded themselves, collusions with a whole bunch of other countries too, with the British Superior Court and with the FBI involved with them, grouped too, predicate acts with the court, with the court's methods individually, but then further discernible grouped with the FBI before and after the World Trade Center attack. They recorded, confessed, demonstrating, and confirming that it's their roles with intelligence on the sides of Central Connecticut State University through the time, too. They're raising state police, criminally foreign influence, tactically delusions raw. Black pupils, collusion /S, too. And then needing to deny that, to screen the breaching method, also to censor for it, pretending it's not fathomable. The breaching method is there, black pupils. Here. They even have people involved with conversations with Gail King and with her family members and with her sense and sensibilities, with law identities, on and off Central Connecticut State University, with the FBI and the courts. Also, their predicate acts involved, as ones involved with the World Trade Center attack from Connecticut, leading up to it in that spot and since. A bunch of people from Weathersfield are intelligence families that work with UConn, and they work intercities, and they have roles with at next to Trinity College and Central Connecticut State University, with the Cololo family involved, and a whole bunch of people tied to them, putting fake things in databases, fake ties, fake natures of ties to me, and and the Joshua Stryker too, sequence shifting, putting fake ties, fake natures of ties to me, and hiding and faking what is reported. Increasingly, their roles with overt criminal enterprises, private ones, FBI Director Robert Luskin, their co-defendants, their family members, putting fake things in databases with interbranch switching names, and in the World Trade Center attack context, and since to hide it. And you guys don't follow mandated law. And you can't be, you change the fake digital evidences, including women roles with that, and with sexual offenders of kids digital, that the courts and the FBI had roles with before the World Trade Center attack. Further syntax, even have the right to lie when they said that when Emily or Amy with the Hartford courts, Hartford Superior Court, and their roles with Officer Hunter and people on off Park Street and its conjunctions and in other words, the conjunctions to the state capital of Connecticut, increasingly a Mile family, and people like a Casper family, and people involved with the former Mayor Gold are involved with the spots next to the state capitol, also with an O'Brien family, and more people at Sandy Hook and with Sandy Hook promises, also with sexual and medical offenders of kids, and their roles with, their syntax with ad placements and with digital crimes with the FBI too, and the Facebook pages of the New Britain Superior Court and Weathersfield Police and the principal upskirt nature also involved with Sandy Hook with these predators and people with the prison there and prisons with the corrections officers and judicial offices and collusions with untimely deaths and names at and next to body dumping spots, and the serial killer forced to collusions with them with the names next to there, even if he was the killer. Even that van was his tied to people with per the confessions of a Joe DeMoro. Marco Mancini will tell you, I don't know him. They try to make a fake exception. I don't know, or maybe he did too. I don't know. And people tied to a Joe DeMoro and the educators of a Marco Mancini, who I don't even know them either. They're putting fake things in databases with a DeMoro and people involved with body dumping spots on off to Rail Highway in its conjunctions, and like Hangdog Lane, its conjunctions, and Old Common. Joe DeMoro said, confessed, and recorded people on Old Common involved with the police influenced him to plant evidences there, fake ties, fake natures of ties to me with others that also did that into databases. I only saw him one time real quick when I was in 5th grade on my campus. And then after that, with a Mr. Pruzzi. That's the only time Mr. Pruzzi ever said anything to me personally. He's increasingly involved with people with Central Connecticut State University and with people before I was and after I was in his class who are increasingly involved with different organized crimes and relative body dumping spots and federal crimes with news at the same time. Like in WFSB attached me to great conversations with themselves and with others. And these are some of the ones involved with that. That in other words, since on a mass scale, when people go before courts, they're putting fake things in databases. In other words, there are natures and methods of organized crimes associated with the people who have been associated with the breaching method that has them, in other words, these prisons too are increasingly involved with predators. Like at Sandy Hook has a prison there involved with foreign and domestic military and intelligence with Sandy Hook Newtown, increasingly confessing, recording, and demonstrating. There is a Cololo family, and there's one's name Scalora. I mean, and there's a Phil Cololo involved with them with the O'Brien family too. at the corner of Carriage Hill Drive and Fox Hill. And I think that was the Tim O'Brien wearing a dress. But they have something to do with their syntax with the people at the corner of Fox Hill and Carriage Hill Drive with Colo and O'Brien, who have been putting fake things in databases with their educators and people that from before they moved here. And one time, Joe DeMore was pretending to fight him on my street. There are proofs that people were putting in from Hartford Hospital were putting fake things with that. Increasingly, they have roles. How you doing? I forgot what I titled this video. Oh yeah, abuse and corruption. There are all kinds of scams. A whole bunch of people at Hartford Hospital have houses near me, and people tied to them involved with the Leahy family and a Lombardo family, and foreign and domestic medical families, also ones with badges and gavels, who have been putting fake things in databases, as ones with the former director of the F.B.I, Robert Lusk, and his co-defendants and their family members and state police families interstate. They have intelligence with UConn involved with Confederate with interracial themed and like Confederate flag themed, Latino themed, KKK themed, black themed. They have time collusions with each other. DeMoral's Market has roles with the former director of the FBI, Robert Lusk, and his co-defendants, their family members, and the family members of journalists and the people at and next to the journalist locations where they've been planting things. Vaccines, these are people from Connecticut involved with the World Trade Center attack. So a lot of money has been scammed. They have all kinds of scams at Hartford Hospital, refusing to identify themselves legit, refusing to get onto paper. They're refusing to communicate with me. And they have these people that offensively pretended they had conversations with me. And they hid what I communicated to one guy. And two, after that, with the people involved with threats on my street, with the Wethersfield town offices, and people involved with a Smith family and a Colo family that the police brought up with their confessions and the courts, and they're forging and switching names in multiple police departments, and they're making confessions. They're making everyone speak through others. They have roles with the fire departments too, with them with Whiting Forensics, with the Facebook page of a principal upskirt nature that the fire departments and other intelligence agencies and people tied to a DeMoral family, they're putting fake ties and fake natures of ties to people into databases, fake motivations for it too. I don't even know tell you, I know they try to take a picture of people walking next to each other. In other words, to fake that too. There are proofs. It's not by accident they're so stupid with black people as white survivors and pretending they're smart. They need to get, in other words, I never had a word of conversation with the Napolitano. One's named Napolitano, tied to a Joe DeMoro and a Ray Colo. There's a girlfriend of hers involved with a Joe DeMoro and a Ray Colo who planted evidences with a girl tied to a Napolitano name. Has something to do with their roles all along Route 3 with a whole bunch of different countries and the Saudi attackers, where the Saudi attackers and America's and Saudi's name was used remotely. These are also people with collusions with some atheist themed and some passionate interreligious themed who have time collusions with differences, racketeering. They're just saying and with doing whatever at locations so they can keep things going before courts. They have collusions with names on all sides of criminal and civil cases, and the court's names and the police forms put in the same sequence shifts at the same time. These are also people who did this right in the Ninth Circuit, right before the World Trade Center attack. It was also their educators. So this will save us so much money. They've been charging people to put them in fake conversations with themselves. They're forging other doctors' names and charging people. They're hiding. They're making it worse by hiding and not getting onto paper. Increasingly, Anthony Yagman recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed roles with Social Security scams and having been influenced to pretend other on Facebook syntactically to hide what he actually communicated because they're involved with communications racketeering. A whole bunch of doctors tied to it. Anthony Yagman involved also with Weathersfield Police with sexual and medical offenders of kids. Even a Principal Bean, I recorded them roles with before that, forcing that, before it was proven off campuses. And people have been doing it as their roles with shopping centers and malls. And people all along Route 175 from the founding locations in Old Weathersfield still communicated about, other than our founders communicated, to have communicated about those places and how and why. George Washington was forced to counter-extort there, but to leave slavery entrenched, northern colonies and southern, because he had no, and other crazy laws against everyone and against themselves. We were supposed to explain James Madison's plan to counter-extort even George Washington, forced to help. But even when James Madison was president, he did not have free speech. Boxing, martial arts, USA Boxing. I was USA Boxing licensed boxer for like 5 years. I was one of the most active open class fighters in boxing. And then the World Trade Center attack happened. And I was really getting good. I was about to like really go hard. Before the World Trade Center attack happened, I didn't know all their names. The former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin, he was as involved with New Britain Superior Harper Court people and New Britain Superior Court people and their family members in intimate ties at West Hartford locations and intercities locations, with people also from Weathersfield at those locations, all the state corrections officers, judicial branch officers. Increasingly, people tied to names Colol and DeMorrow and Kerr and their educators and Hanson and other, in other words, in other words, and their educators have been putting predicate acts in databases. Increasingly, people at Trinity College and Central Connecticut State University have roles planting digital crimes roles and acting tied to that. Wire crime roles with them. In other words, in sequence shifts, as the people involved before and after the World Trade Center attack, with the attack, and with the neighbors of, and as people, family members of courts, like a Dr. Shub of modern languages is involved with translators and with security and intelligence, foreign and domestic, I don't know, Trinity College, involved with my neighbors also next to where he lives, intercities, a Casper family and others are also, he non-verbally sought me out to record, confess, demonstrate, confirm. He had roles with people with it was a Club Blue at the time through different ownerships, people associated with the neighbors of. And as people associated with Allegro's Cafe, they said was associated with the Club Blue too, involved with also a Bose family, a Mendez family that also attached me to fake conversation with themselves at the Weathersfield Police Department and non-verbally demonstrated there. They're involved with identity theft, fraud, slanders with me, people that locked me in the hallway between and a part of a building there near Fox Connecticut News. These are also people through time with St. Anthony's Church involved with, spying on, like, these are people that interbranch involved with child abusers, leaders, and kids. Even if it's made up 3 years apart, those people are involved with other natures of organized crime, including the victims with identity theft, fraud, slanders, planting fake motivations for why and how they use other people's names and know them. They don't even know me. No, they try to make fake, and the sequence shifts with exceptions. As people involved with their teachers still putting fake things in databases, people I don't even see on the campuses. I don't even to know them. Increasingly like this Chuck Casper with the state capitol. He has something to do with the state capitol and people that used to live near me, involved with the different police departments with the names D. Simone, O'Brien, and Colol, involved with wire crime acts and methods with some retired Weathersfield police chiefs and judges speaking fake things in databases with their family members. Increasingly, there's a Delafair family that has been with the intelligence, foreign and domestic, taking pictures for sequence shifts. In other words, roles with identity theft, fraud, slanders with the FBI and with other countries. And people at town lines with foreign and domestic military involved with the World Trade Center attack has something to do. They lied to people about about. I never saw them at that location. They're apparently involved with people with the the spot on the side of with the Morrow family too, with the Town Line Drive. Something to do with Town Line Drive, increasingly with people involved with the World Trade Center attack and Central Connecticut State University names involved with mayors too there, involved with and other politicians. Even they said that there's the family members of Joseph Lieberman involved. Increasingly, people tied to the Morrow family too. Like I don't even know them. They try to make fake exceptions. These are people that have been lying to the people at the boxing gyms too, planting evidences as the ones involved with body dumping spots and murders and probation officers of other cases and things involved with that who had collusion slash S with relative predicate acts and such. Intercities that were connected. They connect things where they use confessions relative to the way the breaching method uses it and their need to hide because the names involved are involved with all those countries involved with Georgia Napolitano subjects still at the same time. Increasingly, a Casper family and others recorded, confessed, demonstrate, confirmed they have all along Route 3 and its conjunctions, like conjunctions to that, like how Hangdog Lane turns is conjunctive to Route 3 into into the Brown Turnpike through Two Route Highway. Like Hangdog Lane runs into Two Route Highway and vice versa. But at the end of Two Route Highway is the Brown Turnpike before the heart of Hartford, and which is a route or a highway. And Route 3 goes by the state judicial branch offices. But increasingly, the judicial branch offices has collusions with organized crimes and with identity theft, frauds, and slanders, and people putting fake things in databases who also have collusions with all sides of criminal and civil cases and depositions in the World Trade Center attack building and the sides of it. And next to it, that's the same with the court too, which is next to it too. In other words, in the difference, these are the same ones involved with the Washington, D.C. a number of ways with my teachers and people who had conversations with them behind my back, who I never had personal conversations with. And they spied on what I said to change and fake, what had something to do with Washington, D.C. and people all along Route 175 involved with identity theft, fraud, slanders, and putting predicate acts with facts at each campus I went roles. It's not just against me. I'm only allowed to speak against me. They're abusing the kids through. I've since before that I caught them with the principal child abuser. They have been attaching me to fake conversations with other kids too at the campus to cover up what's ongoing at the campuses that they had obligations to respond to. They're hiding it. They're faking and changing evidences with a Michael Emmett too, and his narrative regarding his retirement. He had obligations to get the Wethersfield police on paper, one name in sequence. He covered up a lot of bad things. I recorded them doing, rules with untimely deaths and more threats on the kids that they're hiding. They didn't even let me speak. And they made all kinds of confessions and demonstrations to me and to others and messages they hid from the Wethersfield parents with some of them. Some of them are named O'Neill and they have roles with West Hartford campuses and with their family in Wethersfield campuses with the name O'Neill and their roles of Whiting forensics with wire crime acts and methods and with digital crimes with the Joshua Julian and their kids involved also with the wire crimes at Whiting forensics and with the digital with Facebook too, has personally and professionally involved with people all along Route 175 from all Wethersfield's founding locations as the ones involved on off the state judicial branch offices and corrections offices of Connecticut, also involved with Facebook personally and professionally, and with the F.B.I. and with the Marines too. Their Facebook pages involved. Let's get them on paper, one name in sequence. Judge Napolitano. I never had a word of conversation with the friend of the I don't remember the Napolitano girl's name. Tied to Drake. I was assuming that was his girlfriend, and that Joe DeMoro was the other kid's girlfriend. I don't know why they called me there too. I know I know a bunch of reasons. People on all sides of the community center and at it are increasingly involved with the Dillon family, and people tied to a Kalal family, and others with the intelligence community next to the corrections offices and judicial branch offices and Hartford Hospital with the businesses and houses there, also with Hartford Hospital names, including lawyers with them, involve all kinds of organized crimes. We're going to save a lot of money by addressing this. We have to get mandated law followed. We have to get Judge Napolitano too, because they have been changing and faking things and lying about their motivations for it. They're implying they have rules with nuclear or whatever, with like some kind of excuses like that, because they're using the right to lie where they don't have the right to lie, where they're confessing things and pretending other. Good wrestling. Boxing, martial arts, and wrestling share an identity designed to show us. In other words, it shows us there are other species bodies. There's the human species body of individual bodies, all group differences generated by what's generated in other species bodies in ours, so we can show it. It's not so we can discern it. It shows us it's not us nor them, but it's all things anyway. In many prey things, but now because there's also a breaching method. Only fakes are allowed to be heard formally. See through it, be the first one to come fully real. Judge Napolitano, Trey, who disbelieves. Get me their name and sequence, narrative, please. Get the Wethersfield police on paper for any police report they ever had, because they've been putting fake police reports since I was a kid, as their collusions with other police departments and family members of theirs. Also with the differences of adult and kid, recorded right through the news. They recorded the roles with their predicate acts, where they have differences, racketeering worse than war crimes. Forgiveness is because there's also hyperforeign involved with the other names of the countries involved. Increasingly, Yukon has roles too, with the ones next to the campuses I went to. Please, Yukon, get them my paper, one name and sequence, and Hartford Hospital too. In other words, you guys also have people there sequence shifting as patients. You got training some sick fake intelligence. A whole bunch of people died to this Jonathan Miano too, and his Violet family, with the houses and businesses next to there. State police and other agencies associated with this Eric Jensen. Foreign countries involved with this Eric Jensen, with predicate acts with facts, with mayors from Wethersfield and their neighbors in different conjunctions to them, and people with their educators putting predicate acts with facts in databases with other countries over criminal enterprises and private ones. You get them on paper, one name and sequence. He'll tell you this is true all along Route 175. They're planting evidences. Some black KKK, Confederate flag theme, Latino theme, differences, rackets with the judges and prosecutors, all natures of investigations. Investigators use remotely, criminally pointable, tactically delusions raw. Get them on the paper, please. John Miano too, with the spots at the end of the all spots conjunctive to Two-Route Highway and Hangdog Lane, like the Berlin Turnpike before the heart of Hartford, and 3 spots at the end of the Berlin Turnpike. He has roles with people that have been planting evidences there, and with the intelligence next to the campuses intercities. He has roles with Stephen Stocko and Maria Vazino, with people with intelligence from Central Connecticut State University in New Britain, Connecticut, involved with educators from Wethersfield, putting fake things in databases with them, including sexual and medical leaders of kids that are involved with, putting fake transcripts, fake ties, fake natures of ties between kids with their own kids, all kinds of scams. In other words, I didn't even hang around with people when I was in. No, I don't want. They make you if you don't talk about you don't want to talk about your own personal thing because that's none of their business. Wasn't even hanging around with them when I was in 9th grade. I didn't even know the people that in my 9th grade tied to the ones that increasingly pretending things with the ones on my street. That's also exploited as the ones involved with the World Trade Center attack. They said their cousin's name is Scalera, and the Wethersfield police brought them up on the phone, and I don't have a phone. So I don't have the means to communicate with them. I have to communicate here. They're recorded using the right to lie, but they don't have the right to lie. Get the Wethersfield police off the fake conversations with me, with the WFSB and Rocky Hill, and with the intelligence next to them, also involved as ones next to Fox Connecticut News and Hartford too, as ones involved with the sources of the WTNH too, and the source next to WTNH is the FBI. who also has who also has worse than criminal incompetence collusions with their Facebook pages, collusions with digital offenders of kids, and of New Britain Superior Court. They have collusions with rape threats and other predicate acts with them, and passion crimes, because that was after the World Trade Center attack. Before the World Trade Center attack, the FBI and the courts were interceded with New Britain courts and Harvard courts for planting evidences at West Hartford locations and federal evidences crimes and predicate acts with child abusers at and next to fire campuses and Central Connecticut State University with the kid and the family of Dean Judd and his family and people tied to them. There's a Wayne, others out that put fake evidences with them, sequence shit, fake ties, fake natures of ties to me. I never saw the Eric Burgess on that campus in my life. He's one of the ones involved with the Harper courts and the Britain Superior Court with the FBI and foreign and domestic military that forced Saudis to collusions with them, also with overt criminal enterprise, private ones, and child abusers, leaders of kids, people with foreign and domestic military. No, even like get them on paper, one name and sequence. Increasingly, people that had roles with home break-ins in my area have roles with the educators too, putting fake things in databases like a Joe DeMoro and a Heather Hansen and other boyfriends she had too. Also put fake things in databases with their educators like a Joe DeMoro, putting fake things in databases with his educators, having people film and see things. There are proofs. In other words, when a Joe DeMoro threw down the bike of a Ray Reynolds, that was a directed acting because of what I recorded them covering up through that. In other words, they recorded other than they pretended since everyone was a kid. Black pupils. These are people involved with all kinds of drugs, medicines, crimes, and scams at Hartford Hospital with the same house/S and a bunch of people tied to them. But it involves their roles with the corrections officers and judicial branch officers in all sides of criminal and civil cases and the interbranch reporting at the same time, putting the same sequence shifts and with news. It's only to have once we deal with this that way. That everyone gets positive value nature progressions, acts of nature everywhere at once. These are people with Russia, Ukraine at the same time with Hartford Hospital, with the Slahy family, and with the Judge Killian and other judges and their family members involved with the houses they're made with sexual and medical offenders of kids with them and their delusions raw. Judge Napolitano too. Get them on paper, one name and sequence. And I want a response for the principal child abuser's confessions and things I recorded and confirmed and had demonstrated by them. I want a response for that. And get that, please get that judge, that officer Poison on paper too. They're putting digital crime, changing and faking digital evidences. They have wire mail crimes. Weathersfield police attached me fake conversations with them at the police station too as a kid and now as an adult. They did this with other people too. They did it at Hartford Hospital too. No. A bunch of 3 times they forced me there. One time I forced people to call the police without telling them why. I knew they were going to record themselves fake, and they did that. They put me fake conversations with themselves. These are increasingly people with the Parks and Recreation of Weathersfield and the Weathersfield town offices and other probation officers through time, and how really the intelligence family is trained and came through school. Fools. Increasingly, there's a Nick Sweet on Facebook that the intelligence community recorded capacity demonstrated confirmed is involved with the Fred Gruzet with planting evidences on my street with sexual and medical offenders of kids. Involved also with overt criminal enterprises, private ones, and town lines. These are not legitimate roles of military, foreign and domestic, too. Criminally pointable and tactically delusions wrong. Identity theft, fraud, slander, sequences, fake motivations for it. Again, the town lines. Differences, black people. Yeah.